34 years ago, that same Sergeant Major, later Lieutenant Bill Tite, with him his wife June. Bill, you reckon that of dozens of close shaves in action with John, that was the closest?
When I dived for the doorway, and I kept shouting, "This way, sir." And if he'd have followed me immediately, I'm afraid we'd see no more of the Colonel. But with this uncanny knack he had of an instinct he had, he dashed the other way, and thank God that you did, sir, otherwise this place would never have been the same without you.
In fact, Mrs. Tite, you're almost as much an expert on John Frost as your husband here, from all the tales of him that Bill has told you.
Yes, that's true. You know, Bill had always such faith in his Colonel, and he often talked to me about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Bill Tite. When the campaign in Africa ends, you lead your battalion in the air invasion of Sicily, on into Italy, and there's more hard action. But in December 1943, it's back to England because there's an even bigger job on hand, D-Day. And though you don't know it then, there's to come that moment in September 1944 when you're to spearhead the great assault aimed to finish the war in a single stroke, Arnhem. And your job in the biggest airdrop ever, the toughest task of all, to seize and hold the Arnhem Bridge, the last vital stepping stone to the final attack against Germany. A thoroughly daunting task, but one that you approach with your customary coolness.
Johnny's first order was to his batman, to pack his golf clubs and dinner jacket.
Another Arnhem veteran, Major Victor Dickie Dover, MC. Tell me, Victor, was John's batman surprised at that order?
I don't think so. Dennis Swix, he had served John for a long time. No, I don't think he was a bit surprised. He understood at once that this order really meant this operation was going to be a complete success. And in a few days, I may not want my dinner jacket, but I'll certainly want my golf clubs. He had the great philosophy that there was no such thing as defeat. It didn't exist. That his own 2nd Battalion, no one could defeat them.
But that battle, John, was to be tougher than even you secretly expected. You and the 600 men under your command seize your objective, but you're cut off from all help. And a swift fight that was planned to last for 24 hours stretches into days. And we can see just how ferocious that battle was now as we look again at the film reconstruction of the fight in A Bridge Too Far. That hell continues for 3 days and 4 nights, and you're in the thick of it, directing the defense, encouraging your men, an example that none of the survivors will ever forget. And there's more of them here tonight. Come in, Ex-Sergeant Alfred Darky Reynolds, Ex-Private Walter Rook, Ex-Corporal Ron Holt, and Ex-Sergeant Stan Halliwell. Gentlemen, you have 1,000 memories of Colonel Johnny Frost in that Arnhem battle, but Stan, you've a story that sums up the defiance and courage that he showed.
That's true, Ian. I was taken prisoner at the height of the battle for the bridge, and the men remaining at the bridge were in a bad way, and my captors decided that I should be sent back with an ultimatum for Colonel Frost. The choice was to surrender or annihilation.
And what was his reply?
Tell him to go to hell.
Thank you, Stan Halliwell, Victor Dover, Darky Reynolds, Walter Rook, and Ron Holt. Enemy tanks and flamethrowers in ever-increasing numbers literally obliterate your defensive positions, and when the battle ends, out of the 600 men of your beloved 2nd Battalion and those fighting with them, just 19 escape. You're among the wounded, and your war ends in a prison camp, but not your soldiering career. And in 1945, you meet Gene for the first time, and Gene, he showed that soldierly quality of an instant decision at your very first meeting.
Quite right, Eamon, yes. After our first meeting, I found out later that he said to the chap who was with him, "I'm going to marry that girl." And that's how it worked out.
Yes, it did, and here's the wedding day on the 31st of December, 1947. And in 1953, another great day, the arrival of your first baby, a beautiful youngster who's grown up to be a fashionable model and who, as you know, has just flown out to Sardinia on a filming assignment. But if you watch that screen, she talks to you now, your daughter Caroline.
Hello, Dad. I'm sorry not to be with you tonight, but I'd just like to take this opportunity of telling you how great you are as a dad, and also for the achievements that you've made for our country, which I didn't really appreciate the full extent of until I was about 17 or so. But you really have done a lot for all of us, and I think it's tremendous. And you're not bad as a dad either. Love you very much. Hope you have a smashing time tonight.
Thank you, Caroline. Well, there's more overseas service for you, John, during the fighting in Malaya, but it's in 1960 that you're in charge of an exercise in Northumberland, and asleep in your command caravan one night during a lull in a mock battle, you're shaken by the shoulders and a messenger brings you a special dispatch from the home front.
Sir, for unto you a son is born.
The man who brought you that news 16 years ago, he's flown back from command of an exercise in Germany, then your brigade major, now Major General Michael Walsh, DSO. Michael, the son, of course, was Hugo here. How did John receive the news?
Well, you must remember he was fast asleep at the time. And when I woke him up rather rudely and shook him by the shoulder, he suddenly shot up, hit his head on the roof of the caravan, cussed me in the true Cameronian style. I was rather taken back, and all I could think of to say was, "Unto you a son is born." Whereupon he sat up again, hit his head for the second time.
Well, obviously he forgave you.
Well, I think so, because a few weeks later, I learnt that they'd called their son Hugo Michael.
Thank you, General Michael Walsh. Well, those bangs on the head can't have done too much damage, John, because you go on to complete a most distinguished career. You retire from the army with the rank of Major General in 1967, and you spend your days now as a farmer in Hampshire, a long way from the din of battle. But to the men of the Parachute Regiment, the name of Johnny Frost will always be a legend. And if you watch that screen now, you'll see their special tribute. Over to Aldershot, then, to meet the junior soldiers platoon of today's Parachute Regiment.
Major General Frost! Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip!
And the band have gone one better than that, John. A detachment is here to play in another parade. More veterans of the 2nd Battalion who fought with you more than 30 years ago at Bruneval, North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and Arnhem. friends and comrades in arms are here, John, but before we finish, I want to recall one more dramatic moment in your life. Doug Crawley, you were with John in the final hours of the Arnhem battle when a mortar bomb landed close in front of you. Will you tell us what happened next?
Actually, Eamon, there were three of us together, and we were blown in all directions, Johnny and I sharing the metal between us and our legs. The general, or the colonel then, Batman, was the first to pull himself together, and he dragged Johnny into a small room to shelter him from anything else which came down. He then came back for me. He then took a pistol out of Johnny's holster, cocked it and put it in his hand, and said, because there were still Germans all around us, said, if any Germans come through that door, sir, shoot! He then went for the stretcher bearers.
Well, shortly after that, both you and Dennis Wicks, your Batman, were captured, John, and you didn't meet again. But for 33 years, you've never given up the search to find him, even taking out newspaper advertisements asking for information. Well, John, we found him for you, and he's here. Come in, ex-private Dennis Wicks. John Frost, this is your life.
Thank you very much.